I'm going to walk you through the examples on your first review for your final exam, which is technically just over fourth quarter material. So we're going to start with Chapter 10. And Chapter 10 was all about surface area, volume, and regular area. So we're going to start by finding the area of these 5 shapes. So our first shape is a circle, and the formula to find the area of a circle is pi r squared, and r stands for the radius. So the radius is going to be half the distance from the center of a circle to the side. So what they're giving us right here is called the diameter, and we need to find the radius. So the diameter is the whole distance across. Half the distance of the circle, if we do 8 divided by 2, cut it in half, we would get 4. So my radius is equal to 4. So you have to be careful not to just plug in whatever number you're given. So if I plug this information into my formula, I would have pi 4 squared. And remember, you can leave pi in your answer. So the answer, the simplified answer to this problem would be 16 pi. And remember to have your units. So centimeters squared. Area is always squared. Okay? All right, our next shape is a rectangle, parallelogram. And in order to find the area of a rectangle, parallelogram, square, anything with 4 sides like this is going to be base times height. So we're going to take the base, which is 9, and the height, which is 4, and I'm going to multiply those two things together. So I'm going to do 4 times 9, and that will give me 36 centimeters, and area is always squared. Okay? This is also a parallelogram. It's got 4 sides here, and it's got 2 sides that are parallel to each other. So it's going to be the same exact formula that I used for my rectangle, base times height. And if I plug in my information, the height has to be the straight up and down. So my height is 3 and my base is 9. So I'm going to do 3 times 9. And that's going to give me 27 meters squared. Okay. My next shape is a triangle, and the formula to find the area of a triangle, I'm going to use 1/2 base times height. So I'm going to plug in my information. Now remember, your base and your height have to come off of your right angle. So whatever 2 sides are coming off of that right angle would be considered your base and your height. So I'm not even going to use 5 in my answer here. So I'm going to just do 1/2. 3 times 4, sorry. 3 times 4. So I'm going to do 3 times 4 first. 3 times 4 is 12. Times 1/2 would give me 6. So my area of this triangle is 6 kilometers squared. Okay. And then the last shape is a trapezoid. For a trapezoid, the formula is going to be 1/2 base plus base times the height. So your 2 bases are going to be the sides that are parallel. If I kept these 2 lines going, they would never ever touch. So this is a base and this is a base. I'm going to add those together, and then the height has to be straight up and down. So this is going to be my height. I'm not going to use 7 at all. So I'm going to plug that information into my formula. So I'm going to have 1/2. My first base is 11, my second is 5, times the height is 6. So I'm going to have 11 plus 5 is 16. I'm going to multiply it by 6. I'm going to multiply it by 1/2. So I'm going to have 48 inches squared. Okay? So that's how you find area. All of these formulas are going to be given to you. It's your job to figure out where you're going to put them. What is the shape you're going to use with those formulas? Okay, let's move to the next page. This is still chapter 10, and this time they're asking me to find surface area for these three, and then for these three down here, they want us to find the volume. So for our first shape right here, it's important that you can recognize that this is a rectangular prism. So before you start doing anything with surface area, it's important to shade your base. For a rectangular prism, you can shade whichever one you want because they're all rectangles. I'm going to choose to shade this front rectangle. And I would highly suggest if you're doing this one with me, you do the same shape. So I'm going to shade this front shape, and that's what I'm going to use for a majority of my information here. So whenever you're finding the surface area of a prism, it's the same formula every single time. So you're going to do 2 times the base area plus the perimeter times the height. Now when we talk about base area, that means you're finding the area of this base. This is why we shaded it. We're going to find the area of this shape. The perimeter, same thing. We're going to find the distance around this shape. And then the height is actually talking about the height of the entire prism. So what's connecting this base to the base behind it. Okay, so let's plug in our information. I'm going to always start with this 2, my base area. So how do you find the area of this shape? Well, it's a rectangle, so that means in order to find the area of a rectangle, it's base times height. So the base of my base is 5, and the height of my base is 3. So I'm going to do 5 times 3. All right, plus, now I need to find the perimeter. So the perimeter is going to be the distance around this shape that I shaded. So I should have 4 different sides. So I'm going to have 5 plus 3 plus 5 plus 3. Try to fit that in here. 5 plus 3 plus 5 plus 3. And then the height of the entire prism, remember what's connecting this front base to the back base, would be 8. So I've got all my information plugged into my formula. Now it's your job to simplify. So I'm going to simplify everything that I can. So this would be 2 times 15 plus 5 plus 3 plus 5 plus 3 would give you 16. And then times 8. So 2 times 15 would give you 30. And then if you do 16 times 8, you would get 128. So I've simplified. I have one more step. I'm going to add these together. So 128 plus 30 would give you 158. And surface area is still going to be units squared. And that's your final answer. Next shape is a cylinder. And it's going to be the exact same formula because a cylinder is also a prism. So I'm going to use 2 times the base area plus perimeter times the height. Now I'm going to plug in my information. I'm going to start with a 2. And this time, to find the area of my base, which is a circle here, it's pi r squared. That's what we did on the front. So if I do pi r squared, my radius of my circle is 5, so 5 squared, plus, now this is where it's a little tricky, the perimeter of a circle. How do you find the distance around a circle? It's a whole separate formula. 2 pi radius again. So 2 times pi times the radius, 2 pi 5. And then the height of the entire prism, or the cylinder, is 12. So now I'm going to simplify where I can. So I'm going to have 2 times 5 squared is 25, so I'm going to write it as 25 pi plus, I'm going to do 2 times 5 and keep the pi at the end, so that would give me 10 pi times 12. So I still have a little bit more simplifying to do. I'm going to do 2 times 25, so that will give me 50 pi plus 10 times 12 would give me 120 pi. And then one more step. I'm going to add these together and keep the pi at the end. So I get 170 pi feet squared. So pi feet squared. And that's your final answer. Last prism to find surface area is going to be this triangular prism. So since it's a prism, it's the same formula. 2 times the base area plus perimeter times the height. So I'm going to plug in my information. I'm going to start with a 2. This time, the base of my shape is a triangle. So this triangle as well as this triangle in front, they're exactly the same. So if I look to find the area of this triangle, I'm going to do the base times the height. So remember to take the times a half. So remember to take the straight up and down height. So I'm going to start by writing 1/2, since it's a triangle. My base is 6, so times 6 times the height is 3. Okay, plus the perimeter of my triangle, either one, all the sides are 6. Now I'm superstitious, so I'm not going to write out that all. So 6 plus 6 plus 6 is going to be 18. I'm just going to simplify that right now. And then the height of the entire prism, which is connecting the two triangles, is going to be 12. All right, so now it's my job to simplify. So I'm going to have to do this 1/2 times 6 times 3, and that would give me 18 times a half would give me 9. So I'm going to have 2 times 9 plus, and then 18 times 12 would give you 216. So one more step here. I got to do this 2 times 9, which would be 18. I'm going to write that down here. Sorry, I'm squished. So I'm going to do 18 plus 216, and that would give me 234. So 234 centimeters squared. All right, guys, so now we're going to move on to volume, and volume is a lot simpler than surface area. Surface area had a lot going on. So let's talk about volume. Again, I have a rectangular prism. I'm going to shade this front one again. It's the shape I want to use. Now to find the volume of these prisms, it's easier because I'm just going to take the base area, so the area of this shape that you shaded, times the height of the entire prism. So to find the area of this shape that I shaded, I'm going to take the base times the height of this rectangle in front. So the base is 10, and the height of that shape, I don't see anything written here, so it's going to be the exact same that's back here. So 10 times 12 is my base area, times the height of the entire prism is what's connecting this shape to the back shape, so times 6. So I'm going to have 120 times 6, and if I multiply those together, I'm going to get 720. So 720 centimeters, and for volume, the units are going to be cubed. So 720 centimeters cubed. Last type of volume problem, now we're doing a cylinder, so we have to shade our circle. Oops, I have to do that in yellow. So we're going to do our circle. So it's the same thing, it's going to be base area times height. But since it's a circle, in order to find the base area, I'm going to do pi radius squared. So my radius is 7. So pi radius squared times the height of my entire prism is 9. So to simplify, I have 49 pi times 9. And if I multiply 49 times 9, I get 441 pi centimeters cubed, since it's volume. Alrighty? Alright, moving on to our next chapter. We talked about radicals. So the first thing you're going to be asked to do is find the missing side of a right triangle. So this is a right triangle, and your job is to find this side. So it's important to know which side, well, first of all, what formula we use to solve this type of problem, and that's going to be the Pythagorean theorem. So the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. And I'm going to label my sides. Which side is A, B, or C? The side that's across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse, which is C. And then A and B, it's completely up to you. The legs don't matter. So I'm going to make this A and I'm going to make this B. So now I'm going to plug that into my formula. So I'm going to have, I don't know A, so A squared plus B is 8 squared. And that's going to equal C squared, which would be 10 squared. So I'm going to simplify. I still don't know this A squared. Plus 8 squared is 64 equals 10 squared is 100. Alright, so I need to get A by itself, A squared by itself. So to do that, I'm going to subtract 64 on both sides. I'm sorry this is squunched. But if I subtract 64 on both sides, that would leave me A squared equals 36. I'm not quite done yet because I still need to get this A completely by itself. So remember, the opposite of squaring something is finding the square root. So that means that just regular old A is going to equal 6. So that's my missing side. Next one is going to be simplifying a radical. So it's important to know your perfect squares, which are listed on your cheat sheet. But 12 is not a perfect square. So the process is you're going to find the biggest perfect square you can divide by 12. And in this case, I'm going to zoom in here. In this case, the biggest perfect square is 4. So the square root of 4 times the square root of 3 would give us 12. Now we're going to break it down. So the biggest perfect square is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2, so that's going to come out. And we're going to keep the square root of 3 as it is, and that's how we simplify that radical. All right, the next one is a quadratic equation, and we're going to solve for x, but in order to do that, we need to get x squared all by itself first. So in order to do that, I'm going to do the opposite. So the opposite of multiplying by this 5 would be to divide by 5. So that would leave me with x squared is equal to 15. So I'm not quite done yet. I have to get rid of this square. So the opposite of squaring something is finding the square root. So that means that x is equal to the square root of 15. Now it's important to ask yourself, is there a biggest perfect square I can divide by 15? And in this case, there is not. So that's going to be your final answer. X is not equal to 15. X is equal to the square root of 15. All right. Next chapter is all about polynomials, and the first thing you're going to be asked to do is to add two polynomials together. So when we're just adding them or even subtracting them, we're going to just find our like terms. So I see a 3x plus a 4x. Those are like terms. And then I see a negative 10, keep the sign in front, plus a positive 5. So those are the two things I'm going to combine. So 3x plus 4x would give me 7x. And then a negative 10 plus a positive 5 would give me a negative 5, so minus 5. These are not like terms, so that's going to be your final answer. On to the last page, still polynomials. This time it's asking me to simplify, and when you see something that looks like this, the only way to simplify this is to distribute that 5x squared. So I'm going to multiply 5x squared by everything that's in these parentheses. So I'm going to start by doing 5x squared times 2x. So I'm going to multiply the coefficients, so I'm going to get 10. X squared times x to the first would give me x to the third, because I'm going to add those exponents. Now I'm going to multiply 5x squared times a positive 7. So 5 times 7 is 35. And this doesn't have any x's, but this does, so I'm going to bring them down. Now ask yourself, can I combine these? Are these like terms? No, this is x to the third, this is x to the second, so I can't combine those. So that's my final answer. Next one, when you're multiplying two binomials, the process is FOIL. Remember, FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, last, and this is where we're going to see binomial Bob. So you're going to start by multiplying 4 different times using FOIL. So first two terms would be x times x, and that's going to give us x squared. Then our outer two terms would be x times a negative 9, which gives you negative 9x. Our inner two terms are 7 and x, so plus 7x. And then my last two terms are 7 times negative 9, which is negative 63. So now I'm going to combine my like terms. If you do FOIL correctly, you should see two like terms right in the middle here. So a negative 9x plus 7x would leave you with negative 2x. I'm going to bring everything else down. So I'm left with x squared minus 2x minus 63 is your final answer. This one's another FOIL problem. You have two binomials. It's asking you to multiply together. So we're going to use first outer, inner, last to simplify it. So I'm going to start with my first two terms, which this time is x times a negative 2x. So that would give me negative 2x to the second power, because this time I had a coefficient in front. Then I'm going to do the outer two terms, which would give me a negative 6x. Our inner two terms, negative times a negative is a positive 6x. And then my last two terms, let's see, what color did I use? 63. So my last two terms would give you negative times a negative is positive 18. So always look for those like terms at the end. So I have negative 6x plus 6x. Now that's going to give me 0. So I do not need to write 0. I'm not going to write anything because these two things cancel each other out. So we're just going to bring down what's left. So I have negative 2x squared plus 18. And that's your final answer. All right, next one is recognizing your power rules. So this outside power needs to be distributed to every single term that's inside of the parentheses. So we're going to take it one piece at a time. So this 3, I'm going to start by bringing that to this coefficient. So what that would give me would be 2 to the third power. And I'm going to write it just like that. Now this 3 needs to go to this x. Now the x has a power of 1. So I'm going to multiply 1 times 3, which would give me x to the third power. Now I'm going to bring this 3 to the w, which has a power of 4. So I'm going to multiply those two together. So I'm going to get w to the 12th power. And then lastly, I'm going to bring it to the z. So it has a power of 5. I'm going to multiply the powers. So I'm going to get z to the 15th. Now there's one little thing I can do to simplify this, which is my coefficient. So I'm going to actually compute 2 to the third power, which gives you 8. I'm going to bring everything else down. 3x to the third, w to the 12th, z to the 15th. And that is your final simplified answer. Last one is another distributive property, but this time there's a little bit more going on. So I'm going to just start by distributing this 9x to this negative 3x to the 6. So 9 times negative 3 would give me negative 27. X to the first times x to the 6 gives you x to the 7th when you add them together. Now I'm going to multiply 9x times a negative 2x to the third. So 9 times negative 2 is negative 18. X times x to the third gives you x to the 4th. And then lastly, 9 times 11 would give you plus 99x, and that's it. So you can't simplify that anymore. That is your final answer, and you are finished. All right, good luck, you guys, with your final exam. You will see another review very similar, so you can use this as an example.